On the topic of racism, we find an alarming level of double standards in the way in which our society at large deals with racism. These double standards are particularly also manifested in the way that many media institutions report on racism. So let me list some examples of how racist double standards manifest in our society. During the past 2 days, we heard the name Penny Sparrow a lot. She was an unknown estate agent from KwaZulu-Natal who referred to black people who litter on the Durban beachfront as monkeys. In contrast, Velapi Kumalu, an employee of the Provincial Department of Sport, Culture and Recreation, wrote in response to Sparrow's post that he wanted to cleanse the country of whites and that whites should be treated in the same way that Hitler had treated the Jews. In a second posting, it said that white people in South Africa deserve to be butchered like Jews and be killed. So what are the differences between Penny Sparrow and Velapi Kumalu? Sparrow was an unknown estate agent, while Kumalu was, and I believe still is, an employee of the government. Sparrow offended black people, and she did so in a very grotesque manner. But what Kumalu did was to call for a butchering and a genocide of white people. Sparrow was fined 150,000 rand, while Kumalu was, as far as I could determine, only subjected to an internal investigation. Standard Bank economist Chris Hart was instantly converted into yet another example of the evil that is white racism when he tweeted that South Africa has an entitlement problem, which has a negative impact on economic growth. On the other hand, Lulu Zingwana, Minister of Women, Children and People with Disabilities, went on international television making the most atrocious statement imaginable. Young Afrikaner men, she said, are brought up in the Calvinist religion, believing that they own a woman, they own a child, they own everything, and therefore they can take that life because they own it. Now, I find this statement extremely offensive. What the minister did was to go on international television and insult the very core of my identity as a young Afrikaner. So what is the difference between Chris Hart and this particular minister? Hart was an economist for Standard Bank. Zingwana was and still is a cabinet minister. Hart made an economic observation based on his research suggesting that many black South Africans have an entitlement mentality. What Zingwana did was to make a false racist attack right to the very core of what a particular minority community holds dear, their religion. Hart and Zingwana both apologized. Hart was fired and Zingwana continues with her job in cabinet. Now, imagine for a moment if a white person went on international television and made a statement more or less along the following lines. The problem with black people is that they are brought up in a culture according to which they become lazy and violent, believing that they can steal whatever they want because the world owes them everything. I mean, this is extremely deplorable, and I'm convinced that millions of black people would never forgive and never trust a white person who said this, despite an apology. But if this is the case, why then should white people trust this particular minister? Or why should white people trust a cabinet that shelters people who make statements like this? When EFF supporters invaded the Elsenburg Agricultural College and started attacking white students with whips, the university authorities remained silent. When, in the absence of campus security intervention, AfriForum announced that they would arrange private security to protect the students, AfriForum was immediately denounced as divisive and polarizing. During the court case of the Shoot the Boer song, or Dubula Ibunu as it is known, Julius Malema, who was then still president of the ANC Youth League, the youth league of the ruling party of course, was asked why the ANC stopped singing Kill the Boer, Kill the Farmer, but continued to sing Dubula Ibunu. This was what he said under oath about what he was told. When we were discouraged to sing Kill the Boer, Kill the Farmer, the explanation was that the farmer is directed at a particular group of people. And what is worse is that farmers are not only white. You are going to even kill people who are part of your struggle if you want to kill farmers. So you are actually pushing away the potential supporters of your struggle when you say, kill the farmer. Now, Mr. Chairperson, what he effectively said was that they were instructed not to sing Kill the Farmer because not all farmers are white. effectively what he said was that killing white people, or at least promoting the killing of white people, is all right, but that killing your own supporters is not acceptable. We have been told repeatedly that the names of towns and streets that are offensive needs to be changed, and on that principle we can all agree. So what we've seen in recent years is, for example, that the name of Church Street in Pretoria has been changed, presumably because the name Church Street is offensive, while the name of Kingsway in Amanzimtoti has been changed to Andrew Zondo Street. Now, what Andrew Zondo did was, on the 23rd of December 1985, he planted a bomb in the Sanlam shopping centre, killing 3 women, 2 children, including a baby, and injured 40 people. He's now venerated a hero, while some of the families of the people who were killed still live in Amanzimtoti. So perhaps you can tell me which is more offensive, the name Kingsway Street, or driving to work every day in a street that was named after the man who killed your child. When I asked the representative of the Department of Arts and Culture this question, and what the criteria for offensiveness was, he responded that whatever the majority, in other words, whatever black people regard as offensive, will be treated as such. Now, these are all examples of double standards, and I can really keep going, but we have time constraints. We also find that these double standards manifest in the media, where, for example, white on black crime is almost always reported as racist crime, where black on white crime is almost always reported as normal crime, even when the evidence clearly suggests that the crime was motivated by anti-white racism. There are examples of white farmers being killed while the attackers scream statements such as "Viva Malema" or "Apartheid is over." And there are examples of murderers stating that they have killed white people only because they were white and because they were influenced by songs such as "Kill the Boer, Kill the Farmer." There's not a lot of evidence in this in the media, but it did happen. In South Africa, telling a black schoolgirl that she is not allowed to wear her hair in an afro is exponentially more newsworthy, and according to the media, much more deplorable than a black person murdering 4 white people and then publicly stating that he did so because they are white. As a matter of fact, in the same week in which the so-called racist hair policy scandal hit the news, a student council member at the University of Pretoria, just across the street from that school, publicly expressed his urge to murder white people with a bazooka. AfriForum issued a press statement on the matter, but it seems that many of the media were too preoccupied with the atrocity where a black girl was told that her hair doesn't comply with school policy than to write about bothersome stories about a student leader inciting the murder of white people. In November 2016, Marlene Herford and Grant Short were severely assaulted by 3 men in Rustenburg. They were threatened with the words, "Vandag vrek julle wit bliksems. Today you white bastards will die." After she had blocked her cell phone tablet, one of the attackers called the last number that she had dialed and said to the person, "You white bitch, I'm coming for you." Now, I'm aware of only one newspaper that reported on this incident, suggesting that this was a racist act. Now, if you imagine a white person had kidnapped a black person and said, "You black bastards are going to die," just imagine what the reaction would have been. The reality is that violent crimes in which white people are the victims and black people are the offenders are not condemned with the same enthusiasm as cases where black people are the victims and white people are the offenders. About 2 years ago, I was personally threatened with murder because of the color of my skin. It happened on Twitter. I went to the police station to file charges, and the next day I was called by the investigative officer, who literally told me that he doesn't know what Twitter is, that he doesn't know how to investigate the matter, and that he's not going to investigate the issue, nor is he going to transfer it to someone else who can, and that I can expect never to hear from him again. We heard from a representative of Facebook yesterday, and I can tell you that we have reported many people who openly encourage racism on Facebook. In one case, Lindsay Marsdorp, a leader of Black First, Land First, was openly calling for the murder of white people. In another case, he posted, I quote, "Black God needs servants in Cape Town. Wind plus matches plus white-owned farms." This was, of course, while there were all these fires in the Cape Town area. So he was reported to Facebook, and Facebook's response was that his statements doesn't violate their community standards and that they would not take it down. Now, in conclusion, we heard yesterday, for example, from the Nelson Mandela Foundation and the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, that they were very concerned about a white person who used the words "those people." Now, I so wish that I could sit here today and complain to you about people describing white people as those people. Our reality is that our members are being threatened with rape, assault, arson, and even genocide almost on a daily level on social media. There is nothing that I would like more than to live in a society where I had the luxury of complaining about words like those people. Our reality is one in which the state president says in parliament that we must accept that we have less rights because we are a minority, in which the ruling party is prepared to go to court to defend their so-called right to sing about how my community are rapist dogs that must be shot, and in which the worst thing that the government employee who publicly calls for white genocide can expect apparently is that he will be reprimanded at an internal investigation. In the last 2 weeks, 11 white farmers were murdered on their farms, some of them tortured to death, but according to government policy, the theft of copper cable seems to be a higher priority than the torture of white farmers. So, Mr. Chairperson, we will continue to engage in public discussions about racism, but I have to be honest with you. My constituency has lost faith in the public discourse on discussions about racism. Thank you very much.